This is our final week of this year's journey program. Pause, make space for God. You know, we've touched on a wide range of subjects that are about the Lord, about ourselves, about who we are in the view of our relationship with the Lord for the last 6 to 7 weeks. And we have asked a lot of questions and tried to answer those. We asked, how does God speak to me? Why did God create me? Who is Jesus? And how does he relate to my life? How does the Lord work in my life? Week 5, what does the Lord want from me? How do I follow the Lord? So that's been our 6 weeks. And at some point, we might have asked why those are important to ask. Have you ever asked those questions? Why those are important to ask? I mean, obviously, those are so important so that we came to church, we sacrificed a couple of important things in the morning, and we've been thinking a lot about those questions. And as we are now coming to an end with this program, some might have expected something more exciting, subject-wise, for our grand finale, with a big promise of blessings and some happiness and some super positive news, right? And the last piece is going to tell us that we are so good people that we deserve every bit of blessing, and that the Lord promises that, and period. But our final question to ask is, how does the Lord want me to serve others? And you heard me well. So it comes down to serving our neighbor. And we are going to explore why serving others and thinking about others first are so important in our Christian faith. And if you think about it, it isn't about a great reward that we will be entitled to, or how going to church can make our life, our natural life, thrive evermore. Sorry to tell you, folks, but it's not. It's not about those immediate rewards and blessings. So the question is then, how? That's the question. That's what we're going to get away for our final week of this program. Love the neighbor, serve the neighbor. And I mean, it's obvious that's what the Lord wants us to do. You know, to be fair, this should not be by any means a surprise for anyone, because loving the neighbor or serving the neighbor is one of the 2 great commandments that the Lord has taught. And in fact, loving and serving the neighbor is the backbone of our Christian life. And bear in mind that what we are talking about this morning is how we get closer to God the Lord by loving the neighbor. And also that's how we are saved, believe or not. And that's also how we inherit the Lord's kingdom. Our reading or text this morning is from Matthew 25. And we should understand first that, yes, here the Lord says about serving the neighbor, but at the same time, we should also know that the Lord raises it to the next level of importance, or in fact, to the highest level of its importance. And do we know how? First, Jesus says that loving or serving our neighbor is the same thing as loving the Lord himself. I think that's pretty important already. Okay, let's say you've found someone who was not properly clothed, out of poverty or out of some trouble, and you help the person by giving a cloth to put on. Or you took the person in and gave him or her a shelter that they needed for the moment. And if you did, then you are actually doing those to the Lord, according to Jesus' own words. So here, loving the neighbor isn't just between me and the other person or others, but it becomes about me and the Lord. So that's just one reason why it is important to love and serve the neighbor. And essentially, this has to do with how we understand and define what and who our neighbor is. Consider our neighbor not necessarily as a person or a group of people, but as someone, no, as something or a quality that is good in others. And then think, if we do something good to them for the sake of that good quality or that goodness that they have in them, then we are doing it to the Lord. Didn't you have a time when you wanted to support and cheer someone out because you knew that the person had such a big, good potential to become good? Didn't you have a time when you just wanted to give everything you have for someone because you knew that the person has something really valuable in their heart? And at times I think we have those soft, loving moments that we want to empower other people because we saw a glimpse of hope or a great potential that who they can become. So we are supporting them, we are empowering them, we are serving them. And again, we are doing those because we have seen something good and truthful in them. And when we do those to them, we're not just doing to those, but we are doing those to the Lord. That's the concept here. So when we are offering kindness, support, guidance, or what have you, because we care about the good things in them, we are doing it to the Lord because those good things and truthful things in them are from the Lord. And we are helping those things, we are empowering those. The differentiation here is that we are not doing those because we somehow favor them or in the hope that they will give us the favor back. We are doing so because we care about their good heart, their potential, and their integrity. And think at the same time that whatever that goodness or truthfulness in others is our true neighbor. And think that you are doing something good to them. Okay, it becomes between me and the Lord. And as I said, that's one thing why serving the Lord, serving the neighbor and loving the neighbor and serving the neighbor is so important. And the point is that if we think about serving and loving our neighbor from this perspective, the matter becomes critically more important. So as to say that this is something that you could put your whole heart for it. And that's how this serving others is also serving the Lord works. And Jesus speaks it as a parable in our reading from Matthew 25, and I'm going to read it again. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick. You visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then The righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in person and come to you? And the king will answer and say to them, Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brother, you did it to me. And here comes another reason why the Lord's teaching brings serving the neighbor here to the next level of importance. It's because the Lord says it as He speaks of a time of the last judgment for us. Speaking of the last judgment, I'm just going to make a brief mention of what comes after we die in the world, or more properly speaking, once our body fails us entirely. This is an interesting topic. You know, our body might fail us and die or even perish, but our spirit or our soul will still live, because that inner being of ourselves cannot die. It's given by the Lord. It cannot die. It's just our body that's failing at the end of our day in the world. I know it sounds like a dream, but imagine that there's a place called the Lord's kingdom or heaven, or there's another place known as hell or hells in the spiritual world. And we enter there once our body entirely fails us. And let's think it this way. Hopefully entering heaven, is like inheriting the Lord's kingdom. It's about our receiving what is the Lord's or what belongs to the Lord. And it's about our making the Lord what is the Lord's, as it were, as our own. That sounds inheriting. We are inheriting something from the Lord. Anything that's good and anything that's true. But now the Lord tells us in the text that whether we inherit the kingdom or not will depend on what? Depend on what? It's going to depend on how treated our neighbors, and thereby how we've treated the Lord in them throughout our lives in this world. In other words, the Lord puts our serving the neighbor at the same level of inheriting the Lord's kingdom or heaven. Does that surprise you? Oh, the Lord is serving the neighbor and loving them at the same level of inheriting His kingdom or heaven. Does that surprise you? And Jesus Himself says that when a time of judgment comes individually, that's how we are judged, or that's what our life is judged for. What we've done and how we've done to our neighbor is going to be how we in our life are judged in the end. Then what about your university degree from Harvard if you had one? Right? What about a half dozen certificates that you've earned or obtained over the 30 years of your life? How about your good appearance in the community work? Now, what about your remaining balance in the bank account? Are those going to remain with you? Are you going to inherit those in the next life? Unfortunately, apparently, and in fact, most obviously, if you have not loved your neighbor and thus the Lord, then I'm sorry, you're not really inheriting much. And you or we want to look back and think again what kind of life we have lived. And I'm not making this up to scare you off. We are basing and talking about this exactly based on what the Lord's plain teachings are in Matthew 25. And by the way, don't get me or don't get this part wrong. I mean, things like education, going to school, learning skills, and being able to support yourself and your family, those are important, naturally and spiritually. As long as those things lay the ground for being able to serve the people around you and thereby the Lord. We're not saying that those are not important, but we are saying that our goal should be always set towards the two great commandments. To have the feel and the weight of our reflection on Matthew 25 better, I am going to read the reading once again. And here out for two examples in the text, the sheep on the right and the goat on the left. And one is going to inherit the Lord's kingdom and not the other. One group represents those who've served the neighbor well again, or who have loved and served the Lord by doing so. And the first group is called righteous, and is also compared to the sheep. I really want you to have it, okay? The Son of Man or the King will separate them on one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he'll set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then the King will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me." And here comes the second group in the parable, and know that the tone is very different. Then the King will also say to those on the left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in. Naked, you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, but you did not visit me." Okay, eventually we're going to pause here. Okay, first pause. This is about judgment. For the second group, we are shown or given, it's a terrifying vision. He says to the people on the left that they are cursed into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. How do we take that? Oh man, that's pretty scary. And is Lord going to send you into a fire of hell so that you are going to be burned forever there? I mean, as we know, a lot of us know, the Lord, being love itself and goodness itself, won't and can't send anybody into hell of a fire, literally. But we may end up being in what's called a hell, where we are ruled by and tormented by a fire of our lust, grudge, hatred, and also all sorts of other hellish things that we can ever imagine. And that's what is meant by the everlasting fire. It's a fire of our own evils and falsities. We are not talking about a literal fire of hell. And this is uniquely and especially the new church understanding of hells. More to be said. But note that, or think that, that is where we may or will end up being, as the consequence of not loving and serving the neighbor throughout our lifetime. The end of my life, that can sound like it's a dream, it's too far off. But according to a Christian faith, there is going to be a time of judgment for our spiritual life. What the Lord will ask us then, when that time comes, it's going to be a simple question. Have you loved and served throughout your life? And thereby, have you served me and loved me? And that's going to be the question we are going to be asked. In the end, everything about our life, everything about what we did and how we did to our neighbor or to people around us will reveal about who we really are or who we really have become with our life on earth. I was working through this text, Matthew 25, and I was realizing that this is a big text. It talks about our neighbor, the last judgment for individuals, hell, the Lord's kingdom or heaven, life after death, and the Lord's presence in us, especially in His goodness and truthfulness, and how we inherit the Lord's kingdom. It has a lot. And so I want to pause here the second time and allow us to think, because this is, I think, a dire matter. And if you ever believe and care about your life and your spiritual life as a whole, we need to think now that how we've lived and how we will live matter tremendously. Some people think, no, they'll get away with it. Some think that whatever they have done here in the world somehow wouldn't really affect them because they somehow magically are going to be accepted into heaven for some reason. Oh, really? Do we believe that? And how can we ever inherit something if we are not ready for it? We are going to inherit the Lord's kingdom or heaven only if we have loved and served the neighbor. And we won't if we have lived a life that has been about loving just who we are and serving ourselves alone. And that life, if we look deep into it, is essentially a life of hell, of wanting more for oneself, craving more for oneself, and twisting the whole reality for oneself. And imagine, is there going to be any place for people around you and the Lord there? Jesus' teaching here leaves us with one thing to remember. What we do out of love is going to remain with us. If we cared about other people or the Lord's goodness in them especially, and if we have put our heart out there for it, that's going to remain with us to eternity. And that's going to be our eternal inheritance. On the other hand, if we, throughout our lives, have decided and live the life of hating others, belittling others, thinking nothing about others, but to cherish what we think, what benefits us, then that's exactly what we are going to inherit. I think this is simple math. We sow something, we build something here on earth, and that's what we are going to inherit in the next life. So, what we do out of love remains. And I have another reading to read, and this is from Teachings of the New Church, Secrets of Heaven 4663, and it is not in the order of service. So I kindly am going to put it up on the wall. And this passage speaks right back to what we've been exploring so far. The fruits of faith are nothing else than a life led in keeping what faith commands, and therefore it is a life in keeping with what faith commands that saves a person, not faith apart from life. For a person takes with him or her after death every state of their life, so that they are like what they were when they had been in the body. That is to say, anyone who during his or her lifetime despised others compared with him or herself continue in the next life to despise others compared with themselves. Anyone who hated their neighbor during their lifetime continue in the next life to hate their neighbor. Anyone who engaged in deceitful practices against companions during their lifetime continue to engage in those against companions in the next life, and so on. Everyone retains in the next life the essential character he or she has acquired during their lifetime. And it is well known that it's not possible to get rid of one's essential character, for if one does so, no life with the person at all remains. I'm glad that you've been following along for 6-7 weeks, and this service particularly was a longer one. The subject that we were dealing with was something special, something very unique in a Christian faith. And now we are going to wrap up. Putting our hearts, especially for their goodness and their good potential, is going to be the greatest value and reward we can ever aim for. And that's going to be the key and the pathway to inherit the Lord's kingdom, if we ever care about going to heaven and being with the Lord there. And remember the enormous emphasis in the Lord's saying on loving and serving the neighbor, and thereby loving the Lord. And once again, that's commission for us. The Lord once again commissions us to make a life and build our life of doing so in each unique way. And on that day, whenever that day may be, we may inherit the Lord's kingdom. And He may tell us, "Come, you blessed, O my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." Amen. All right, we have one more small group tomorrow evening, but with that, that's going to be the last final piece of our journey program. And as I said, thank you for following along with that. I mean, for some, because, we've been just coming to church every Sunday and it's been 7 weeks, but for some other, they've been doing daily readings, they've been coming to our Monday evening small group or meeting. So I would call it as some sort of small journey. And is there something or anything that you thought you took away from our today's service? I did not give you an apology beforehand. I knew that it was going to be way longer than it usually is, because my manuscript. But you know what? I'll say this: my manuscript were 9 pages, and I cut it down to 7 pages. So okay, I wasn't trying to. So all right. So anything you thought you might have taken away from this big text and reading and the Lord talking about His heavenly kingdom? Wow, that's a big one. All right. So as you remember, our journey program is called Pause. The simple message is, I do hope that we still find some time to pause from thinking about us, or thinking the way we think, and so that the Lord may speak to us more often, hopefully. The second one, because I have two new persons, and I'm very tempted to bother them. And Andreas, would you like to read this one? This is what we do, the second one.
The number 2?
Yep.
I have this. I can't see it. I'll go to the front. No, I can't see it because of the curtain. What is one characteristic for heaven or to inherit the Lord's kingdom as suggested and depicted in the reading? So what is one characteristic for heaven or to inherit the Lord's kingdom as suggested and depicted in the reading?
In our Matthew reading, what is one thing? I think this is really easy one. What is one thing?
You're inheriting what you sowed.
Right. And what is the seed of that? So we need to sow a seed.
The way that you treated your neighbour.
Thank you. That's great. I mean, isn't that somehow mind-boggling? Because I think there are a lot of people out there who believe something like, they got to be smart, or they got to have some special, almost esoteric, mysterious knowledge of heaven to go to heaven, or things like that. But if we ever care about going to the Bible or the Word and read about what Jesus said, wow, yes, it's pretty clear. It's about how we treat the people around us. And that's going to remain us, and we're going to retain that. And once we depart from this place, as our body is failing, that's our life that we've sown, cultivated, and grown for, 70 years of your life, or 80, 90, whatever. And that's going to come with us. Okay, I'm just gonna leave you with these 2 thoughts. I have 2 postlude, one just instrumental, and just 2 minutes, and you can think about those. And another postlude for just listening.